Hi guys, welcome to our Sudhir NEET Biology Academy. Today we shall move on to another very important endocrine gland in the NEET point of view, that is the thyroid gland. Thyroid gland, its structure, what are the hormones secreted, and what are the disorders, and what are the treatments for them. So everything we are going to see in this video. So now we shall take up the gland, thyroid gland. The thyroid gland consists of two lobes connected by a structure called isthmus, muscular tissue, isthmus, right? Two lobes. So inside the lobes you can see follicles, thyroid follicles in which the thyroxine is secreted. So if you take the structure of the follicle, the thyroid follicle, so it is very important for the NEET point of view. If you take one follicle, thyroid follicle, let us see the structures. First of all, the first MCQ, the follicle is surrounded by cuboidal epithelium. So there are four types of epithelium, squamous epithelium, columnar epithelium, ciliated epithelium, and then cuboidal epithelium. So it's one of the important MCQ in NEET. This follicle, thyroid follicle, is surrounded by cuboidal epithelial cells. Very, very important. Cuboidal epithelium, right? So inside this, the chamber, thyroglobulin is secreted. Thyroglobulin. That's a glycoprotein, and it contains an enzyme, tyrosine. It's also another MCQ in the NEET point of view. So inside the follicle you get thyroglobulin, that is a glycoprotein, which contains the amino acid tyrosine. So it's an amino acid derivative hormone. Right. What are the, if you take this epithelium, it does two important functions. Number one, it secretes this thyroglobulin inside the follicle. Number one. Number two, this is a bloodstream outside the follicle where you get iodine. This cuboidal epithelium traps the iodine from the blood and takes inside the follicle. So thyroxine is formed of iodine. To form thyroxine, iodine is very important. Iodine is the basic form for thyroxine. So it does two functions. One, it secretes this thyroglobulin, it's a glycoprotein, tyrosine, amino acid derivative. Number two, there's another function, very important function. In the blood surrounding the epithelium, thyroid cells, you get iodine in the blood. So it absorbs, traps the iodine ions, and then it gives into the follicles. So this is I have told you three MCQs. One, the cuboidal epithelium, then two, thyroglobulin, it's a glycoprotein, another, it's a tyrosine, amino acid derivative, and then it does another function, cuboidal epithelium, the layer, it traps the iodine from the blood and gives inside the follicles, right? So thyroid is the only endocrine gland, it's another MCQ. Thyroid is the only endocrine gland in which the follicles store their products, secretory products in large amount. These are the follicles. Is the only gland, only endocrine gland that stores the secretory products secreted by the thyroid follicles. Very important. It's the only gland that stores the secretory products of the follicles in large quantity. Right. Now let us come to the hormones. What are the hormones secreted by the thyroid gland? Two hormones on thyroxine and thyrocalcitonin. Let us take up one by one. Thyroxine is also called as T4 or tetraiodothyronine because this thyroxine contains 4 iodine atoms. And another T3 is triiodothyroxine. It contains 3 iodine atoms. The T4 is converted into T3 by the removal of 1 iodine atom. It's a very common thing that how the T3 is formed by the removal of 1 iodide ion from the thyroxine or T4. When compare T3 and T4, T3 is more active. T3 is more active, more potent, but it is stored in less amount. T4 is secreted more in amount. And then this T3 and T4 are synthesized by attaching iodine to amino acid tyrosine. I told you the amino acid tyrosine. So the T3 and T4, thyroxine is also a tyrosine amino acid derivative hormone. So here the T3 and T4 are synthesized by attaching the iodine to amino acid tyrosine by enzymatic action. So how this T3 and T4 are formed is a big biomolecular structure that we need not go into which. You just know this T3 and T4 are synthesized by attaching iodine to the amino acid tyrosine by the enzymatic action. Now let us take up what are the functions of this thyroxine T3 and also T4 and T3. So very important gland. First function, it controls basal metabolic rate of our body. So metabolism is anabolism and catabolism. So anabolism is the constructing process, eating, digestion, absorption, assimilation, etc. or anabolism. And breaking down, respiration is catabolism. This anabolism and catabolism combine to form this metabolism. So our body has got a metabolic rate. That metabolic rate is maintained by the thyroxine hormone. Very important. Number 2, another important function. You may wonder, it helps erythropoiesis. What do you mean by erythropoiesis? That is RBC formation, red blood cell, erythrocyte formation. It helps in the erythropoiesis. So if the thyroxine level is low, your RBC production will also be low. You will lead to anemia. Number 3, it takes part in growth of the body. It's another very important function in the NEET point of view. Growth that affects on skeletal muscles, on skeleton. Pituitary affects smooth muscles, whereas this thyroxine affects the skeleton and affects the growth. There is a fundamental difference between dwarfism and cretinism, we will see. So growth, it also affects the growth of the body. It has more effects on the skeleton. This is very important. Number 4, another very important, it controls the mental development. Thyroxine is very important for our mental development. So in childhood, if it is less, it is secreted in lesser amount, it leads to the disease called cretinism. They will be having, we'll see separately. Cretinism, the child will be having low IQ, idiot, etc. So mental development also. So this thyroxine affects the mental development also. If the thyroxine level is low, in children it forms a disease called cretinism, and in adults myxedema, we will see. So controls BMR, very important. RBC formation, very important. Growth affects skeletal muscles, very important. Mental affects mental development. So everything is an MC question, the NEET point of view. So NEET aspirants, kindly listen, note down. And number 5, it facilitates or affects some neurotransmitter and hormones. It also indirectly affects the pathway of the hormones. For example, the cortisol secreted by the adrenal cortex, aldosterone secreted by the adrenal medulla. So it also affects or facilitates some neurotransmitters and the hormones, for example, cortisol and aldosterone. We said basic metabolic rate. So for metabolism, we need carbohydrate, protein and fat. So this controls the metabolism of carbohydrate, protein and fat. Number 7, it balances the water and electrolyte. Water and electrolyte balance is done by the thyroxine hormone. And another very important is should note down, NEET aspirants, development of nervous system is controlled by thyroxine, especially by birth and the first year. So whenever if you go to a doctor, the pregnant lady goes to a doctor, definitely endocrinologist will advise that to maintain the thyroxine level correctly, because that will affect the baby at birth and the first year. It's very important. It's another NEET question. Then increases the metabolism of all tissues except brain. Another MCQ. Except brain, it affects or increases the metabolism of all tissues of the body. Another important, reduces serum cholesterol level. Serum cholesterol level. So that's why if thyroxine level is high, the thyroxine is responsible for the reduction of serum cholesterol level. It maintains the cholesterol in our blood. Then it increases the absorption of glucose from small intestine. The small intestine, it also does another function of absorbing the glucose and increases the glucose in the blood. Muscle function. It affects the muscle function also. We'll see in the thyroidism. It affects normal gonadal functions. Normal gonadal functions. Testes and ovary, the functions of this testes and ovary are slightly affected by this thyroxine hormone. So these are all the functions of the thyroxine hormone, T4 and also T3. Then another hormone, THYROCALCITONIN, is secreted. So now we come here, the structure of the thyroid gland, where you can see small cells called parafollicular cells or C cells. They secrete the hormone THYROCALCITONIN. So parafollicular cells of the lobes secrete the THYROCALCITONIN. It's a peptide hormone. It is a peptide hormone. It is antagonistic to the parathormone secreted by the parathyroid gland. We will see when we take a parathyroid gland. So what is the function of THYROCALCITONIN? It reduces the calcium level in blood. How? It regulates calcium level, controls calcium level in blood. Very important. Check osteoporosis. The disease osteoporosis is avoided by the secretion of the THYROCALCITONIN, because it absorbs calcium in the blood and gives so calcium deficiency, it leads to osteoporosis. So what happens? It regulates the calcium level and controls the calcium level in blood. So THYROCALCITONIN regulates the calcium level, controls the calcium level in blood, and check osteoporosis. So these are all the functions of the thyroid hormones, thyroxine and THYROCALCITONIN. Then coming to disorders, there are two disorders. One, hypersecretion or higher secretion of thyroxine, and hyposecretion or lower secretion of the thyroxine. So hypothyroidism and hyperthyroidism. So hypothyroidism is less secretion of the hormone thyroxine. Hyperthyroidism is more secretion of thyroxine. So if you compare these two, what will happen? The people having hypothyroidism will be having low BMR. The BMR rate is very low, whereas in hyperthyroidism, high BMR. Number two, the hypothyroidic people are lethargic, lazy, whereas hyperthyroidic people are restless. Number three, very important, bradycardia. In hypothyroidism, the people will be having bradycardia, the disease wherein you get the heart rate is low than the normal, bradycardia. Whereas the hyperthyroidic people will be having tachycardia. Tachycardia, that means the disease wherein you get the heartbeat is higher than the normal rate. So you can differentiate the hypothyroidic people and hyperthyroidic people by bradycardia and tachycardia. Another important NEET question. And then hypothyroidic people will be having cold tolerance, whereas hyperthyroidic people will be having heat resistance, heat tolerance. And then hypothyroidism, you can easily see they are gaining weight. Even though their appetite is very less, they won't take food regularly, but the weight is gained. They gain weight in spite of the less appetite. Whereas in hyperthyroidism, the weight will be lost. Weight loss will be there. Even though their appetite is more, they take food often, the weight loss is there in hyperthyroidic people. So this, if you compare these symptoms, you can easily identify the hypothyroidism and hyperthyroidism. Now let us come to the actual disorders. In hyperthyroidism leads to a disease, cretinism in children. In children, the thyroid hormone thyroxine is low. Disease called cretinism will happen in children. That means children will be smaller, dwarfer, but not the dwarf as compared to pituitary gland. They are mentally retarded, both mentally and skeletally. Skeletal development is poor, so they are dwarf, and mental retardation is there. And undeveloped sex organs. And then idiocity, they are idiots actually because the mental growth is not fully done. And then low IQ, the IQ is very low when comparing to a normal person. This is called the cretinism, hypothyroidism. And number two, goiter. Due to the bulging of the thyroid gland, this happens, goiter. Number three, in adults, a disease called myxedema. So you must differentiate. In children, hypothyroidism leads to cretinism, whereas in adults it leads to myxedema. They will be having very low BMR. The basic metabolic rate is very low, and they will actually land on coma. And then they will be having edema all over the body. That is called the myxedema in adults, hypothyroidism. And then the females will be having irregular menstrual cycle. If there is hypothyroidism, thyroxine is less, the secretion of thyroxine is less in female. What will happen? The menstrual cycle will be irregular. Very important. Another NEET question. And then defective child. So during pregnancy, if we don't maintain the thyroxine level correctly, that will lead to a defective child at birth. So these are all the hypothyroid disorders. Coming to hyperthyroidism, one major disease, grave disease is called as Graves' disease, exophthalmic goiter, toxic goiter. The eyes will be bulging, eyes will be protruded out. Actually, its name indicates a Graves' disease. They will almost die. That is the hyperthyroidism. This is hypothyroidism and hyperthyroidism. Hypothyroidism is the disease, cretinism in children, goiter in both, myxedema in adults, in female, irregular menstrual child, during pregnancy, defective child. Whereas hyperthyroidism, you get the Graves' disease, protruding eyes, exophthalmic goiter. Now another thing you must know as a NEET aspirants, if the iodine deficiency or iodine is not the cause for hypothyroidism or hyperthyroidism, then both of them are autoimmune diseases. That's very important. Another higher level question in NEET. If iodine is not the cause for hyperthyroidism or hypothyroidism, then what is the cause? They are autoimmune diseases, also called as Hashimoto's disease. So another very important NEET question, Hashimoto's disease. This you must know, autoimmune. Then what is the treatment for the hypothyroidism and hyperthyroidism? Hypothyroidism is very easy. If the thyroxine level is low, what will they give? The doctors will prescribe thyroxine or L-troxin. Orally, the L-troxin or thyroxine pills are taken as a remedy for hypothyroidism. Hyperthyroidism is dangerous. For hypothyroidism, there are three ways. Three ways of treatment. Number one, anti-thyroid drugs may be given. Example, carbamazole, propylthiouracil. So two anti-thyroid drugs, carbamazole and propylthiouracil. These two drugs are prescribed. And number two, radioactive iodine uptake. Radioactive iodine uptake. So here what they do, the 131 iodine, the radioactive iodine 131 iodide is injected into the bloodstream. That goes into the bloodstream and it traps the iodine from traps the thyroxine in the follicles, or it traps the thyroxine or iodine in the epithelial cells of follicles, and it absorbs the thyroxine, by which the thyroxine level comes down. This is the radioactive therapy. Number third, finally, surgery. Usually full thyroid gland will not be removed. A part of the thyroid gland is removed. So three ways of the treatment for hyperthyroidism. One, anti-thyroid drugs, carbamazole and propylthiouracil, and radioactive iodide uptake. So iodine 131, that is the radioactive iodine, is injected into the blood. It goes into the bloodstream. It absorbs it takes the thyroxine from the follicle cells and destroys it, by which the thyroxine level comes down to the normal. And then surgery. So we have seen, I hope you have understood clearly what are all the things about this very important gland, thyroid gland. This is a major area where you get NEET questions. So here itself I have told you more than 10 MCQs. So be clear with these ideas. Next video we will take up another very important gland, parathyroid glands. 4 parathyroid glands, 2 pairs of parathyroid glands, that we will take up in the next video. Till then, thank you very much.